Hello, we are live for the third day of this Fatherhood Summit. Not only are we live for the third day, we are talking about self-care. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about those qualities that it's so easy for the typical man, for the typical dad to overlook. We have this ideology that we have to take care of everyone else. And if our wife isn't being taken care of, if our children aren't being taken care of, then nothing else really matters. So today, our main focus is on self-care and on leadership. And I thought, what better way to start those subjects off with a dear friend of mine, somebody that I love dearly, Mr. Justin Bailey. Justin, welcome to the summit, my friend.
Matt, I'm so proud of you, man. This is so cool. You put this thing together in what is it? You said 3 weeks or so? I mean,
about 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay. Either way, it's impressive. You got some heavy hitters, and then you got some riffraff like me showing up, and I'm excited for you. It's been great. It's been really great. So kudos to you. I'm glad to be here. We haven't talked in, I don't know, it's been a couple of months since we've had a good conversation. Yeah. So I'm excited.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. It's always, to date, you're the only person I've ever had on my podcast a second time. Nice. You're always a joy and always a delight. It's great to pick your brain and to learn. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and dive right in. So Justin, you have been an entrepreneur for a little while now. Not only have you been an entrepreneur, you've moved across the world. You used to live in the United States. You now live in Germany. You're a husband. You're a dad to, I believe, 4 children. You have a podcast. And to top that all off, you are, I believe you're at least part-time active military, still for the United States. And by the way, thank you. I know I've told you this before, but on behalf of everyone listening, thank you for your service. Welcome home. It's much appreciated. So when you take a look at all those different things, it would be so easy to get overwhelmed. So what have all of these different events taught you about the importance of being a leader within your family?
All right, so you got my attention now. I was messing around trying to get this thing shared out on Facebook to the Go to Character group. Man, so you gave me a little too much credit there in the intro. I got 3 kids, and I don't know if I would say I'm an entrepreneur. We do have a small mastermind within Go to Character, and I put a lot of time and energy into it, and so I still feel like entrepreneur is a stretch for me. I'm not a business guy. I'm not an expert in the fields that I talk about. Unlike a lot of the people that you brought on to the summit, man, you got some heavy hitters who are really experts in something. I'm just a dude who is gone through life, learned a few things, struggles, and is willing to talk about it, and talk about it in pretty much whatever facet and in whatever context people will talk about it with me, and started doing it a couple years ago. So what was your question? Your question was about leadership. Man, I'll tell you what, it's, the military is, you get out of it what you put into it, right? So most of the people that you will find, if they had a bad experience in the military, it's either they had a really bad direct supervisor, right? So they had experienced really bad leadership, or B, they didn't put anything into it. I was like, anything, that's harsh, but they didn't, it's always, your output is always going to be somewhat congruent with your input. And there's outliers. So when I say always, I shouldn't say that, right? But man, so the military taught me a lot, right? It taught me a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff, a lot of things to emulate, and a lot of things to stay away from. And the first thing that it really taught me was, and I was blessed, I've been blessed even in the military and out of the military with good leadership, with not always people who were excellent leaders, and not always people who really even always knew what they're doing, quite frankly, but people who cared. And that's the first thing. The first thing, there's the whole cliche, and I might even mess it up, but people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And what I found is the first step, people kind of talk about, every once in a while somebody will talk about how, I want to be a leader, and, they don't say it like that. That sounds really cheesy and corny, but that's the crux of their question, right? And the first step I always say is just care. Just start caring about your people. right? You don't have to be a technical expert. A lot of times, especially with these kind of young rock star people, when they get promoted quickly, and now we've had some people who are like, I'm 22 and I'm in charge of a 40-year-old, and they know their job better than me and all this kind of stuff, right? Throw all that stuff out. And the step one is just to care. Start caring about people's personal lives, care about their families, learn their kids' names, these types of things, because I've seen it time and time again. And I've been on both ends of it where the person in charge really isn't the person who should be in charge. But man, if you just relentlessly care about your people, they will forgive all that and they will go to bat for you. They will work late for you. They will work extra for you. And that's just step number one, is like, forget all the leadership books and all the fancy things that, yeah, those are good. You'll get there. But man, first step is to care. And that translates into every area, right? It translates into every single area of your life. And there's some things, it's not just that easy, right? It takes some effort. There's some different things that we can do to kind of show how we care and to kind of showcase that. And, when we get into that, if that's where things go, but that's really what my background has brought me to this point. Right. And like I said, I'm not a guy who, I don't have a bunch of fancy algorithms and a bunch of, do these 12 steps and this nine levels of blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm just, like I said, I've just have my experience, and I found some things that worked and I found some things that really don't work. And so what I'm trying to do is to help other men to do the things that work in their lives and stay away from the things that don't work.
That's great. I think a lot of times we forget to use our own experiences to plug those into our family. So how has these different experiences and that type of leadership, how has that translated into your family?
So, it's an interesting question. That's a good question. And it's not something that I've really thought about too often, to be honest with you. But my father taught me at a very early age. My father is a man of high integrity and a man of action. He is not a man that talks a lot. He's not a man that's going to explain things over and over. He's just going to do it. And so he inadvertently, he's a leader by example, right? That's just who he is. And so that's kind of what I grew up with, seeing people who lead by example. Those are the people that you want to emulate, right? And so that's the first thing to me that pops out that I want to pass on to my kids, is and I've not always made the best decisions in my life. And so going forward, when, after I had kids and now that I have kids, like I want to make sure that I make those right decisions. And when I don't make the right decisions, that I have the humility to say I screwed up. Right. And that's hard, because our pride, I'm a very prideful person naturally. It's there, right? Like a lot of us. And that it keeps us from admitting our faults. It keeps us from admitting when we screw up, specifically to people who we outrank in a family structure, right? We outrank our children, right? And yep. So it's so easy to always do the me right, you wrong all the time. And it just gets us into a bad place. And I tell everybody I'm a recovering know-it-all. And what that means is I screw up, I relapse every single day. But it's something I'm very aware of. I'm not excellent at stopping myself, but it's what I default to. I default to know it all. And what I want to be as a student, right? I want to be constantly learning, but I always kind of come back to that. So it's just something I know about myself. And my son is 12. My oldest son's 12 now, and he's a know-it-all. And so I catch myself all the time. Sometimes we have some good debates and some good conversations, but then sometimes it can go to, okay, is this pride now? Or are we having fun? Are we learning? Or, where are we going with this? And so he challenges me a little bit, or a lot, maybe I should say. So that's just kind of, where we're at with that. But I'd say leading by example and humility are the two big things that we need to be striving for. And to follow up with that is really self-awareness. And that's the big thing, is when we screw up, to at some point know it. You're not always going to be, to know it right off the bat. You're not always going to be able to stop yourself, I guess is kind of how I would judge it with me. Sometimes it takes me a couple hours and I look back and I go, okay, I was wrong. Now what, right? How do I make it right? What needs to be done?
That's great. I love, I love this idea of being able to maybe bring yourself down to your children's level. You mentioned outranking them, And as parents, we feel like we have to be a leader, and a lot of people look at this leader role as somebody who's over their children instead of a kind of maybe a servant leader, which is a leader who kind of lifts them up. And I love that you talked about admitting your faults to your children, and admitting and owning that, and being a person of integrity. So what does owning up to your faults and your mistakes, maybe even to your children and in your marriage, what does that do? Like, how does that strengthen your relationship with your children and your wife?
So I think one of the things that I talk about a lot with the group that we have, and the things that the conversations I like to have, is I don't really tell people what to do. That's not really I do sometimes, like right now we're talking about some things to do, right? But the ultimate thing I think is we want men to, and this is women as well, right? But we run a men's group, so almost all this stuff applies to women. I'm just not the guy that's gonna, I'm not the person that's gonna be telling them. But we're after peace. Everybody is after peace, right? And I know this is a lot. There's gonna be a lot of Christians listening to this, and probably some non-Christians. And this is a faith-based thing. But there's spiritual peace, right? There's the old hymn of "It Is Well With My Soul," but there's also like practical, everyday, like I'm not in chaos peace, right? And so I think that comes from being people of character and being in integrity with what we believe in. And so I think that's what you bring to the table when you're actually doing the things that you should be doing and staying away from the things that you shouldn't be doing. What you bring to your family in this circumstance, right? And it translates into the corporate world, into the military world. You bring a sense of peace and a sense of competency to the table, because when I know this, when I'm not doing it, my interactions with my wife and my kids, it's chaos, right? And I'll be 100% honest right now. I was 7 minutes late to this call because I wasn't ready mentally. I wasn't ready emotionally when I came home tonight to do everything I needed to do and to get on this call with you. And that's what it looks like when I'm not doing the right things, right? And so it's one of those things where you say, the old cliche of nobody notices you until you screw up, right? But it's the same with you, right? You don't, when things are going well and things are flowing and there's peace in your house, right? You don't necessarily know it because you're enjoying that moment, you're enjoying that presence, right? But when you start not living in that moment, when the chaos ensues, then you know it, then you pay the price, and all right, I got to get back to the basics of some of these things that I need to be doing and that I'm not doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's we have to understand exactly where it is that we are, and I think that's a great illustration of self-care and being able to take care of us. And you've mentioned a lot about this idea of character. That's kind of your niche. That's where you kind of flourish at. So, what does character mean for you? And then especially when it comes to your marriage and in fatherhood.
Yeah. So to me, character, a large part of is integrity. So to be character is when our actions match our values, right? When our actions every day match our values. And people say, well, that's integrity. Well, you're right. If you're living a life of integrity, that you're probably living a life of solid character, but there's more to it, right? Because I also believe that it's not just staying away from the bad stuff. It's really getting after it and living out your purpose and doing what you should be doing, right? The book of James says that it is sin to know what to do and to not do it. I think I said that right. I'm not very good at memorizing Bible verses. But when I read that, it spoke to me, because I'm like, so that's not just talking about, when we think about sin, we think about a list of rules a lot of time, right? But part of it is living out what we were created to be. Right? And we don't always know what that is, but do what makes you come alive, and everybody around you is going to be better for it. There's a quote, and I can't remember who it's by, but it says, don't ask the world what it needs from you. Find out what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. And when I read that, I'm like, man, that is so true. And that's not being emphasized. Like, nobody, when you're growing up and when you're in school, nobody says like, what makes you come alive? I mean, some people do, but most people don't hear that message. Like, what are you passionate about? And it's going to change. And if you don't know, that's fine. Find something that makes you feel good and start going after that, right? It doesn't mean you have to have a career in I don't know, something that you're super passionate about. If you like surfing, it doesn't mean you're going to be a professional surfer, right? But maybe find a place where you can, kind of just expound upon some of those passions or explore some of those things, every day. And it doesn't have to be how you make your money. It's not for me right now. I'm doing this right now. How much money are you making on this, Matt?
Nothing.
Right. So we're sitting here, right? But we do this for a couple reasons, because we care about what we're doing, and probably because it makes us come alive. I know when I'm talking about the tech stuff at work, my rhythm and my voice doesn't pick up like this, and you don't hear the passion, right? Because this is what I care about, right? And so it's not always about paying bills, but it is about finding some stuff that makes you come alive and makes you just have a passionate outlet.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. So what are some things that you do to work on your character daily? You mentioned earlier that you still mess up, that you still fall short, that there's still that struggle there. What are some different things that you personally do to work on your character?
So the first thing, and I didn't get back to this, I went off on a tangent the last question, but also addition to that character piece is, I think that having a vision of some sort, and I don't specifically have to define what that means for each person, but some people are able to look into the future and say 20, 10 years, 5 years, what they kind of want things to look like for them. And that's going to shift or whatever, but we do need to be going towards some type of compelling vision, something that makes us get up and do some of the hard stuff that isn't always fun. And so I think that's also part of it. Some people aren't in a mental and emotional, spiritual place to look down the road that far. So I tell those people, like, okay, how far can you look? Can you look a year, 6 months? How about next week? What does a better tomorrow look like? Right now, that's an extreme example, but for some people, it's very real. For some people, they are deciding every day whether they're going to get out of bed, during the day or each morning, excuse me. So vision plays a big part of it. And that leads me to the question you just asked, but I went back to the first one. What was this question? Oh, what do I do every day? Got it. I heard somebody was talking the other day, and they were talking about how people think when they talk. And I'd never heard anybody say that. I don't know if it's scientific fact or not, but I never heard anybody say that. But I always know that when I'll say stuff all the time, and I'll be like, oh, I just answered my question, because I'm thinking as I speak it. But when I'm just internalizing it. Anyway, so character building, man, that's tough. So what do you do every day? I think that everything you should be doing should be building towards that vision, should be in alignment with those values, right? And so I make the example of, does anybody like changing diapers? Well, no, you don't like changing diapers. Like, it's not a fun thing, right? But it is part of your vision. Raising a family and, being there for your children, keeping a clean child, right? These are all parts of your vision and parts of the type of person that you want to be and the type of family that you want to have. And so, really, your mental state and your mindset. We talk a lot about mindset, like in our group. We've done 3 in our mastermind. We do a different topic, if you will, every month. This is the 3rd month we've done a different aspect of mindset, because I believe in it so much. I believe that you really can change your world if you change the way you think about things. And I know it sounds silly to say, I enjoy changing diapers, but if you can put yourself in a mindset that you're doing this for a reason, and if this thing is in alignment with your vision, then I really think you can flip the script and enjoy some of the things that don't seem like you should be enjoying them. You mentioned we recently moved to Germany, man. And tell you what, it's been super stressful the last, I don't know, since I accepted the position 4 months ago, when we were in Dayton, Ohio, and my wife and I talked, we're like, this is going to be stressful. It's going to be hard. And it's been very stressful. Moving myself, my wife, and my 3 boys. My son didn't sleep in a wink, I don't think, on the 8-hour flight over here, and that was just kind of a tale of what was to come. I mean, we were living in a hotel for a couple of weeks. We were in temp housing. We've just got into a house that will be our home for a few years. Man, it's stressful. And there's some times there, my wife is going for the first time since we've ever been married. We don't have a washer and dryer here, so she has to drive across town. Like, there's some stuff that sucks, there's no other way to say it. But this is what we've been wanting to do for several years. Like, this is something we wanted to give each other and our kids, is this time to see all of this other part of the world for a couple of years or whatever it ends up being. Like, this was all part of our long-term vision. And so if you can keep that in the forefront of your mind, then some of this stuff, the daily suck, right? They become the stepping stones towards what your future is going to be. And so for me, daily, it's all about mindset. And so, I was thinking tonight on the drive home, knowing I was going to talk to you this morning, I got about between 25 and 40 minute commute to work here. And this morning on the way in, I was listening to Marcus Aurelius meditations. I like Stoicism. I like what they have to say. And, so I'm just taking that in. And on the way home, I was listening to your buddy and my buddy, Dan Miller, his podcast, man. And, it's just feeding my mind and feeding my mental state. And to me, that is the number one thing that you can do to change your situation, is to get your mind right. And you got to start feeding yourself just like we feed ourselves. If you feed yourselves crap physically into your body, your performance is going to degrade, right? You're not going to be able to physically do the things you want to do. And I strongly believe that if you feed your mind crap, that you're not going to be able to cognitively or to emotionally be there for your family, to be empathetic to the world around you, to be able to take a loving and a reasonable approach to the world around you. And that's what they need. I think the world needs men, specifically right now. We're talking about men who act with reason, who can make decisions in hard circumstances, but also from an empathetic heart. And so those are the things I do every day.
Man, that's awesome. And I completely agree with you. Just to knock this point of mindset home a little further, a couple of years ago, you and your wife had the privilege of going on to the Dave Ramsey show and doing the debt-free scream. Now, as somebody who is in debt, my wife works full-time. I'm trying to get this business up and going. I know and understand how difficult it can be to pay off, credit cards and car loans and different things like that. Talk to us a little bit about the mindset shift that you and your wife went through as you guys made the decision to go ahead and pay down debt and get everything paid off.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I can't speak for her, but I'll speak for me. And I'll tell you what, man, it was a strain on, I won't say that I specifically would say like money was a strain on our marriage. It was, but it wasn't just that you have disagreements about money. It just, for me specifically, and I can't speak for her, but for me as the primary provider financially of the family, it was just a weight that I carried. It was like a weighted jacket, right? And so every time that something would come up, maybe talks about a vacation or talks about Christmas or whatever, all I could see was that saddle of debt, right? And so for me, the biggest problem, the hard thing for me in the beginning was to even approach my wife with it and be like, hey, we need to make some changes, because the first thing, going back to that humility thing, right? It was the first thing I had to say was like, I've failed for the last, I don't know what it was, 13 years at the time. I don't remember what year it was, but 13 or 14 years of marriage, like I've let us get off track. And, so that's on me, right? She entrusted me with, primarily bringing the money home and primarily taking care of the bills and all that kind of stuff. Right. And, so for various reasons, we got off track, and so it was tough. So I had to do two things. I had to tell her, like, first I had to admit myself that take ownership of the problem. But the second thing was to get her on board. And I was frankly, I was nervous and scared to do that, to bring that up to her, because some things were going to have to change. And she was going to have to look at me and say, like, okay, so, we've been having these disagreements or these arguments or whatever about money. And now you're bringing this great idea that's just going to bring more financial strife. Right. And so, she was sitting in a position where she felt like I was always vetoing purchases, and I was sitting in a position saying, like, she was always buying stuff. Right. And so, like, both of us can't be right. So it was just chaos. It was really bringing a lot of chaos, man. And so I can't tell you the emotional and the mental weights that were lifted off of me personally, but certainly our relationship, it's not a factor anymore. I mean, we're conscious of the things, the money that we make and the money that we spend, but it's not I remember the dryer went out a couple of months right before we moved to our house, and it was like, nope, that sucks. Yep, $400, go pay it. But it's not, but it wasn't a $400 bill added on to a running credit card list. So yeah, so that was huge. Like, I wouldn't be talking to you right now if we hadn't done that. Like, when I did that, it just opened up my spirit, my mind. Everything was like, okay, now what can I do? Like, and that's when this whole idea of Code of Character started churning. And for me, it just really opened up the floodgates of some of the things that I've been doing the last couple of years.
That's great. So, and I love this idea, this kind of focus of mindset and changing your mindset. And once you change your mindset, it's going to be tough. There's going to be a struggle there, but you can accomplish your goals, whatever you put in front of you, whatever you've got. And there's probably some men out there that are watching this, whether it's live or in a year, 5 years, or whatever, that have got the mindset because of their past history, their past family history, that they're set up to fail in marriage, that they're set up to fail as a father figure. Talk to us a little bit more about how to change that mindset. I know you had mentioned, listening to podcasts, feeding your brain that good, healthy stuff, so that the healthy, good stuff is what comes out to your family. But talk to us a little bit more about how to develop that marriage and fatherhood mindset.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I did if anybody is interested, I did a whole video series in our Facebook group when I first started, talking about when my wife and I almost separated many years ago. And I talk very in depth about a lot of the things that I was doing that contributed to it. And so I'm not going to go into all that completely, but I do want to touch on a couple of things. And when we talk about marriage and we talk about love, like, I am very big, and it sounds very unromantic, but I'm very big on, man, love is a choice. Our choice is the most powerful thing that we have in everything that we do. It's the thing that nobody can take away from us. They can pressure us, right? They can make us into situations where most people would pick, if you put a gun to my head and said, eat something that I hated, right? I'd probably do it, but I still had a choice, right? We still have that choice. And so, we don't, there's this romantic thing about falling in love and soulmates and all this stuff. And we all know it's garbage, right? But it keeps being fed out to society and, whatever, whomever is pulling those strings, right? We won't get into that. But the fact is, man, that we got to get up every single day and make the choice to love our spouse. And the immediate thing that comes up is it's a two-way street. It is, but it's not. Like, my decision to love my wife isn't dependent upon whether she loves me. Now, there has to be a time if she, hurts me, or if she endangers me, or if she stops loving me, or, and says I'm gone, like, then I have to figure out something else, right? I'm not going to get up and do the same things every single day, but we still have a choice to make. We can get up every single day and we can choose to love our spouse. We can choose to love our kids, or we can get up every day and we can find these reasons to be bitter. Right. And I don't think that we get up and make a choice not to love, but we do get up sometimes and forget to make the choice to love. And I know that sounds weird, but I know it in my life when I don't cognizantly make that choice, then I know what happens in my brain is I start getting low self-esteem. Cognitive dissonance takes over, not cognitive dissonance, cognitive distortion takes over. And you know about this stuff. You're a psychology guy, right? And so I start thinking, like, if my wife says something I didn't like, then it snowballs. Like, oh, maybe she's mad at me. Then it snowballs, and maybe she's kind of been acting like that for a couple months. Then it snowballs, and then it just goes on, right? And so I used to, years ago, I would just get in my head about these things, right? And so one of the things that I've used to combat that is every single day, you have to make the choice. I don't do it every day. I'm full on. All these things I'm saying, guys, I don't do them every single day because I'm extremely imperfect, but I'd be better off if I did do them every day. But when you make that choice every single day and you say, I'm going to give my spouse the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to believe that they're coming from a place, unless they've proven otherwise, I'm going to believe that they're coming from a place of good faith, right? And I'm going to love them. The other thing that was huge, and it's just too big for me not to mention here, is when we first got married, we got married very young, and I didn't know who I was. And so I can't speak for her. I think she was in a similar place, but I won't speak for her. But I didn't know who I was. I didn't have an identity. So what happened was I had been wrapping my identity up in the things that I did, the accomplishments that I had made in growing up in academics and athletics and these types of things. And so when I got married, my identity was immediately wrapped up in my marriage, right? And so what happens when your identity is wrapped up in your marriage, at least for me, is that guess what happens when your marriage starts sucking? Well, that means that you suck, right? It's a direct reflection of you, right? And then what happens? Then pride gets in you. And so then pride flips it around and points back at the other person. So the reason I'm unhappy is because of my spouse. And your spouse can't make you unhappy. That's another thing that people push back on. And I get it, right? Your spouse can do things that deserve you to be upset, but nobody can make you be upset, right? And I get upset with people around me all the time. So disclaimer, I'm not above the fray here, man, but these are just concepts that if we can live out, that they're going to bring peace to our lives. And so if my wife, God willing, we're going to be together forever. But if she leaves me tomorrow, I'm going to be sad. I'm going to grieve, but I'm not going to fall apart. I'm not going to lose my identity and who I am. It's not going to be, part of me that's just going to be destroyed, right? Because I have a firm identity. I've figured out who I am. I'm still working on it every single day, and I'm still, trying to discover even more. But I truly believe that marriage, it's not 50-50. Marriage has to be 100-100. It's what two holes come together and make one, right? And sometimes one of the partners is not going to have 100% to give. And so if the other person stoops down to their 60 and their 40, now you can have problems, right? So if both people are committed to 100%, then when the other person lags, then the other person is going to be able to carry them through a little bit. Somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but they said that a marriage is at its best when two people are trying to outserve each other. And I love that so much because we both know that everybody doesn't have good days. But if the other person is picking up that slack, then you're going to carry each other through the bad times.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely love that. Our friend Kent Julian has and he'll be on the summit to talk a lot more about this on Friday. But Kent Julian has a phrase, if you will, and that's E plus R equals O. And the E stands for your experience. These are the things you cannot control. Your R stands for your response or your responsibility, and that's what equals your outcome. Too many of us go around with our heads hung, just upset at the things that are happening to us. And I think that's a great point that you just made. A lot of us choose to react to the things and the situations that are going on around us instead of having a great response or maybe anticipating some of those different responses. And so I love this idea of you've got to understand and be set with where you're at and who you are as a person, your identity, your own mindset, understand where you're at physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and be set in those. That way, when the storms come and when they come knocking, they don't knock you over. You don't get knocked for a loop. And I think that's a problem that, especially us as men, we have. When we see that problem coming at us, we're of the mindset that, hey, we want to fix it. We want to get rid of the problem. We want to fix it. And we don't want to sit there and dwell on it. So I love this idea that you're talking about of understanding where you're at and who you are.
Yeah, and you hit a big thing there, Matt. You didn't say it, but you're really talking about having a code and having your left and your right boundaries and figuring out what are you going to live by, right? And too many of us, another thing that we talk about all the time in our group is like, what do you believe? What does Matt believe? What does Justin believe? Too many of us are walking around with these beliefs that we've had from childhood, and we may or may not be confident in them, right? But we need to be confident in them, and we need to know our code, whatever that might be. And we need to know our non-negotiables. Like, okay, what would I be willing to do if I got fired today? What would I not be willing to do? And what would I be willing to do? right, to feed my family or whatever it is, right? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be forced to figure out what your left and right limits are when you're in the storm, when you're desperate, right? Because that's where the problem comes. And if you don't have people in your life that are going to be like, hey, Matt, this isn't you. Like, this is, why are you doing that? Why are you, whatever it is, insert, illicit behavior here, right? If you don't have those people, then we're out there fighting the storm by ourselves. And man, that's a dangerous place to be. We're out there flapping with no code and no friends that are going to call us on it.
I think that's a great thought, and something I want to bring up as we're starting to settle down with this session, is that we need to have a community of men, community of guys. And we talked about this last night a little bit, but we need to have a community of men that we can go to, that we trust, that we respect. And that way, when the storms do come knocking and you start getting banged up a little bit, we've got those people that we can lock arms with and that we can build one another up. Even if we don't agree 100% with some different beliefs or different values, different morals and stuff like that, we can still lock arms with people of like character and build one another up.
Yeah, for sure. And especially let's just say fatherhood. Let's look at that. Like, you could probably put 100 guys and all have different political views, different interests, different sports they like or sports they don't like, or activities they like, they don't like, even different religions. But I bet you 95 of those guys, probably 99 and maybe 100, depending on what kind of 100 you get, right? They're all going to believe in providing a safe environment for their child, right? They're all going to believe in building their child up. They're all going to believe in wanting a good education for their child. So that's a big thing that we try to do with Code of Character, Matt. I'm glad you brought that up, is, let's focus on the things that we do agree with, because we can sit here and quibble nonsensically about the 5%, the 10%, the 20%, whatever it is that we disagree on, man. But there's all these important values that we share as men and as fathers that, okay, let's focus on that. Let's focus on keeping our kids safe. Let's focus on, let's talk about things that are important to our kids. Education, like what is, I like exploring ideas. Like, what is the best education? And let's challenge some of this stuff, right? Like, what does this actually mean? Like, when should we step in? When should our kids get a cell phone? When should we have a talk with our kids about porn? Have you talked with your kids about porn? Have I, these are things that people aren't talking about, but they're doing it in groups like yours, and they're doing it on platforms like this. These are important things. Because, man, in 2018, when every kid is walking around with the greatest collection of, and I say greatest, I mean largest collection of pornography in their pocket, it's a problem. Yeah. And if you're not willing to talk about it, your kids probably, it's just a matter of time. Kind of segued into porn there, but but keep, focusing on things that we all value and that we all agree with. I think we'd be much better off.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Code of Character, about your business and the things that you're working on, and how people can get in contact with you?
Man, does that mean we're done? That was fast.
Yeah.
So Code of Character is, we have a Facebook group. You can just type in Code of Character into Facebook and find us. It's a free Facebook group. There's like 4,000 guys in there. And we are, I think I've explained a little bit throughout what I'm talking about here, but the mission of Code of Character really is to bring men together of diverse backgrounds and, in various everything, demographics, and bring these guys together and focus on the things that we agree on. This 80%, if you will, if you're into the 80-20 rule, the 80%, right, that's going to move society forward, it's going to heal society. Man, there's so much divisiveness out there, and I like good debate. If you can jump on my Facebook page and you can see I like to talk about controversial stuff, right? But what I really like is connecting with men to really learn your struggles and learn what's kind of holding you back from living the life that you were created to live, right? And I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But we all need to be there for each other, right? And so we're not focused on, I'm not the guy if you want to build $1 million business. I'm not that guy if you want to, get the most girls. That's not our group either. Like, we're just there to support you in your journey and living a life that's based on your values, right? The Stoics would call it the virtue-based life. Virtue is kind of a buzzword nowadays, but it's true. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help I didn't realize how many men were hurting, how many men, I don't like the word broken, but they feel broken and they're struggling, right? When I started this whole gig, I didn't realize how many men were really in a spot where they're hurting and they didn't really have anybody to turn to. So we've been that for some people, and we're just trying to bring some people together and just make a little tiny dent in the world toward, in the middle of all the craziness. And if you watch the news or log into Facebook, sometimes you think the whole world's on fire, the whole world's burning, but there's some little safe havens like your group and like my group where people can just come and just, take a breath, breathe a little bit, come as you are, that kind of thing. So that's what we're doing. You can find me on Facebook, Justin Bailey, or you can email me, justin@codacharacter.com. And, we have a mastermind, and I've taken a couple months off of the podcast, but I'm going to get back to that next week. So, just trying to, I talked about peace earlier, like that I expected to keep up the podcast throughout this move, but it was just, chaos. Right. And so my pride had to say, hey, Justin, you need to keep this up. Right. People that are dedicated, they do it every week. They bring it every week. They grind, they hustle, and I had to fight that demon. Right. It was just coming at me. And I'm like, no, I need to scale back a little bit and try to be there for myself and for my family during this freaking hard move across the world. So if you're ever going to move across the world, call me. I will tell you some of the pitfalls. But man, thank you so much for having me on, Matt. This summit is amazing. I mean, you mentioned Kent Julian, an amazing guy. He has a great podcast. You've been doing your podcasting now, I don't know, for a year, maybe more, I don't know, but just connecting with this quality people. This is what you can do, guys. If I can just take one more second, guys out there, if you're I would say if you're struggling, but not even if you're struggling, if you just want to if you just don't have enough positivity, you don't have enough solid ground in your life, start connecting with guys like Matt, start listening to podcasts like Matt's podcast, join these virtual summits. It's free, and connect with people. I mean, Matt started connecting with people, and now he's got this virtual summit, and it's not just this virtual summit, but he's got connections with real quality people who are doing things the right way. Because I can promise you, he doesn't have one snake oil salesman in his lineup. He has got quality people who are bringing real value and who care about people, and that's not everywhere. So I don't know where I was going with it, but thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate you, my brother.
I appreciate the words of encouragement. Definitely. If you're a man and you're wanting to get inside of a group of people, I can attest to what Justin's saying about his group and Code of Character. They're a group of men from different beliefs, different backgrounds, different values, and different things, and they come together for this same purpose, and that's fatherhood, that's manhood, and learning how to be a man in today's society. So please, do yourself a favor, go check out Justin's group. Justin's a great guy. He's very humble, and we can definitely tell that from today's session is that that's just who Justin is. Justin's a guy who loves helping people. He loves being there for people. And so I definitely encourage you to come and check out his stuff. If you would like to check out my website is www.fatherhood.com. Again, that's www.fatherhood.com. Be sure to check out the podcast. There's some great guests. We've got some great upcoming guests, some surprises, and all that good fun stuff. So thank you for checking us out, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Matt.